Good evening and welcome to Goddesses and Devils with your hosts Amanda Mcmanus and Katie Kamara. So before we get started, here's a quick disclaimer. This show is for a mature audience only, and we ask that everyone please be respectful to one another. And there is a zero tolerance for any forms of harassment, disrespectfulness, vulgar comments, whatever you want to call it. So if you feel that your comment may offend someone, please keep it to yourself. Tonight we have a very special guest. His name is Mike Ricksecker, and Mike has been featured on the Travel Channel's Alaska Triangle and Animal Planet's The Haunted. He is also a very talented author whose works include Campfire Tales of Midwest. Sorry, look, rough start, but it's okay. I apologize, but it includes Campfire Tales Midwest, Ghosts of Maryland, and his most recent work, A Walk in the Shadows. So hello, Mike. I hope all is well. Can you please start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself? Sorry, tongue-tied. I apologize.
You're fine. Yeah, Amanda and Katie, thank you for having me on tonight. So, I guess a little about myself. I mean, you're right. I'm an author. I have 11 books to my credit right now. The most recent was A Walk in the Shadows, a complete guide to shadow people. I've been involved some way, shape, or form with the paranormal for about the last 30 years. But it really stems back to when I was a child and had what we would call a shadow person experience. But of course, I had no idea at the time that's what called it. But I woke up in the middle of the night and there was this figure standing in the corner of my room. Over the years, I had a number of different paranormal experiences. I've always been interested in writing, and so as I got older, the two just kind of went hand in hand as I continued to research and investigate. Of course, started writing about my experiences.
Wow, so you actually had a shadow figure in your home when you were younger. So was it more of an intriguing thing with the shadow figure, or was it more of like a fear you felt with it?
Yeah, with that particular incident, that one it was more fear-based because I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I woke up and, there's this tall, dark figure in the bedroom. Of course, I had no idea from shadow people at the time. I just thought there was an intruder in the house and he was about to kill me. It's about as much as you think at that age. It did do something rather unusual. It did come up to my bed, leaned over, physically took me by the wrist and crossed my arms across my body like that. And then it ran off down the hall. So I ran off to tell my parents and yelled and screamed, and they tried to tell me that I had just had a bad dream, but I was awake for the whole thing. But it's a bit of a different experience when I was 13. We were moving into a different house at that time, and I'm unpacking boxes and putting things away, and there was this shadow figure standing at my door. I would turn and look, and it would take off. And this happened several times where I'd be putting something away or doing something in my room, and the shadow would be standing in my doorway, and I'd turn and look, and it would take off. So that time I did ask my mom if she was seeing the same thing. I guess she thought I was a little bit more mature at the time because she said, well, yeah, I actually have. But she was really just kind of easygoing about it, just kind of affirmed what I had seen. And, I didn't feel any threat from that particular shadow person. It was just more curious. I ended up calling it Tom, like Peeping Tom. And so anytime I'd see him, I'd say, hi, Tom, and he'd take off.
I mean, yeah, I've actually had personal experiences myself, but people would say, "Oh, it's you're just experiencing sleep paralysis," and I was like, "Well, how can sleep paralysis, give me a vision of this figure standing there?" And they're like, "Well, because you're sleeping." I was like, "No, I'm awake. I can feel it press. It feels like it's pressing down on my chest. I feel like I can't breathe. I can't move. I can't speak. I can't do anything. But I can see this figure. But I can't make out whether it's male, female, or what it is. I just see this dark shadow there." And and I had this all my life, pretty much until adulthood as well. And it didn't stop until I started really getting into spiritualism, started to understand things better, starting to educate myself, and understanding that this is something that I was dealing with that was on a metaphysical level, not a psychological level. So
Right.
once I understood how this worked, I was able to, in a sense, overcome it where I do see it, but it's not causing me these, these episodes anymore. And that's with a lot of entities, whether it be shadow figures or your I know they have different words for the haunting. So let's say you have one of those hauntings where it's a poltergeist, or whether it's a residual haunting. These are totally different entities that have totally different causes or abilities that they have on a person. A lot of people can suffer from depressive states, and with shadow figures, it's more of that feeling of dominance, like they want to domineer you, is what I was getting from it. And pretty much I took my power back, where I was like, listen, I'm
Mhm.
not afraid of you no more. This is not how it's going to happen. We're not doing this anymore. And after I did that, it literally ceased, but we still actually saw it. And my kids actually now see it, but it's not as threatening. And it's more in the shape of a younger child now, as is when I saw it as like this massive being, where it looked like it was taller than anybody. They just
Right.
had such a very dominant appearance. Um,
Yeah, that's a really interesting experience with a shadow person, and they're not all domineering. I've met some that are very passive. Like Tom that I was talking about. He was just kind of curious, and he just peek in the room and take off. Others just kind of walk into a room. Maybe I'm on an investigation or whatever, and it just darts across the room like I scared it. So they each have their own personality, and I'm glad you brought up the sleep paralysis, because that's a common misconception that you're seeing these shadow people when you wake up in sleep paralysis as a hallucination. That's what the medical community would like you to believe. And really, sleep paralysis is a natural biological phenomenon. We do experience that as part of our sleep process, that the body paralyzes itself so that you don't act out your dreams. And shadow people are real phenomena. I've experienced both, never at the same time. I've had real sleep paralysis, and kind of the reverse of what a lot of people have it, where they wake up and they're still in a paralysis state. I've actually had it where my body just was completely exhausted and just fell asleep on me, even though my mind was still awake. So, and that was very frightening, first time it happened. But what I always find, funny about the medical community saying that this is, these are just hallucinations that you're experiencing while you're still in a quasi sleep state because your body is still paralyzed. Well, I dream about all kinds of different things while I'm dreaming. It's not always a person. So why am I not hallucinating about like trees or cars or airplanes or other things that could be in my dream? It's always this person that you see standing in the corner of the room or at the end of the bed or what have you. So I think more of what it is that you're waking up at that point in time because you feel the presence of the entity there. You have children, and you've probably experienced the same thing. I know I did with my kids, where sometimes they come into the room in the middle of the night, and they don't always immediately wake you up, say, Mom or Dad, I need something. Sometimes they just stand there, and you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, here's the child standing over you. And
yeah, mine are notorious.
yeah, and you felt their presence, right?
Right.
They didn't actually wake you; you just felt their presence there. And so I think that's what's happening is that these shadow entities are standing there, whether in the corner of the room, at the end of the bed, next to your bed, whatever. You feel their presence, and that's what wakes you up. And your body, upon waking, may just happen to still be in a paralysis state at that point.
Right, because naturally, even when we're awake, we get that sensation that somebody's watching us. We get that
Yeah.
feeling. And why not have that same feeling, like you said, when you're sleeping? Because I know for a fact my daughter Paige is notorious for it. Just the other day, like I said, because we have no power, just the other day, she's standing over me and she tells me, she goes, "Mom, you were snoring, so I don't think you heard me." I was like, I was like, I was like, "I'm sorry if I didn't." I was like, "But you scared me." I was like, "Don't do that. It's not nice." And she's like, "Well, I was just coming to tell you I heard a noise." I was like, "It's okay, because there's generators running around, all around our block. So they're
Yeah.
constantly running. So she's hearing that rumbling. She's not sure what it is." And I was like, "No, it's okay. We didn't have a generator because this was really unexpected." So she was just standing there and I was like, "Wow." I'm like, "You're so lucky." I was like, that I think that, okay, maybe it's one of my kids and, not some crazy person that snuck in my house, but
Right.
these things are very possible. So she's like, "Okay, well, next time I think I'll do a better job." I was like, "Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you should." But yeah, definitely. I feel it, and even because I actually am a gifted person. I do have abilities. I just don't put it out there a lot. I do help in different investigations. I like to help in emergency situations or when someone really needs the help. I don't like to just put myself out there. I am a mom. I also have my degrees in psychology and the things that I'm doing, and I really want to keep them as separate as possible for the time being, because it is a big transition when you choose to completely submerge yourself in this field. There's a lot of history, there's a lot of understanding, both culturally, the metaphysical aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it. When I'm working with a patient psychologically, they do have hallucinations, and a lot of that is tied to schizophrenia and things like that. But these are experiences that people are having that have not or had any episodes or psychoses that would cause this or contribute to these sightings and these feelings and these sensations. So the medical community often writes it off as stress, like you were saying, like stress
Right.
and it's really not fair because um, they're really doing an injustice because they're making the person feel that what they're going through is a psychosis when it really could be just a phenomenon that they're experiencing. So I try to keep myself open to both fields, but I try to keep them separated because I have to be able to justify one or the other because I do work in the field.
Right.
So I think that's like something that I've never heard before, and just until you said it, where you're like, "Well, it's like when your kids stand over you." Yeah, how many people out there have woken up to someone standing over them, whether it be their parents, their spouse, their children. They have that same sensation, as well as you're walking down a hallway and you feel like there's somebody watching you, and you get that feeling of dread, kind of like, "Oh my God, is there somebody there?" Those are the sensations that typically are contributed to activity, supernatural activity.
Yeah.
They do have energy to them. So you're feeling that vibrational energy. You're not necessarily feeling them as a person. So, I mean, I'm really glad that in your work you do mention things like this because it's really it's really disheartening when someone wants to discredit things that have been proven, studied, just because of their belief system. That's why here on this show we do a non-judgmental, non-biased, non-skeptic. We are very open to everything, and this is why, because when you're open, you can actually learn something from one another. And with these experiences, I've experienced them, you've experienced them. I know Katie's had experiences herself where she's felt like, "Oh, no, okay, there's nobody there." So it's really a good thing when other people can say, "You know what, yeah, this happened to me too. You're not crazy." But when we have the medical community saying and willing to tag things as crazy all the time, people don't openly speak about this. So not only are you giving them that comfort of saying, "Hey, you're not the only one. This has happened to several people out there worldwide, globally. You know, these things have been occurring." Whereas when you're isolated in your own environment, in your own cultural or social environment, a lot of people try to write it off because of they're afraid of the labels that come with it. So I think
Sure.
that's great. I mean, I love how you made that connection.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And yeah, it's a big part of my work is helping people realize that they're not alone. And I have an entire series of books called Encounters with the Paranormal. It's a 4 volume set right now. It'll keep increasing. But they're not just stories and experiences that I've had, even though I have several in there. I incorporated stories from a lot of different people from all over, because I could write a book of just my experiences and you may not be able to relate to any of them. But if I include stories from people from all over that have had a lot of different experiences, you may be able to relate to somebody's story in there and realize, oh, I'm not alone. Somebody else actually had the same experience that I had, and realize, no, I'm not crazy. This stuff really does happen. And I think that validation is very important.
Right, it is. And even when I'm doing my own work, because like I said, I am very gifted. I do work with Chris Garcia, who is on the House Walker Files, and I work with the group that we have. They are very talented psychics and mediums. And when I was speaking to them about these things, and well, how do I know when this is going to happen, or how am I able to tell you about your relatives if I never met you or I never met them? It's amazing, because you feel like you can blossom, you could be who you are. And that's what's important. When you give people that relatable information and that understanding, people are able to become more open to embrace who they are. I'm not saying, like I said, there are some people, unfortunately, who are clinically dealing with psychoses that cause them to have hallucinations, or cause them to, because, unfortunately, their behavior and their mindset and the cognitive awareness is impaired. They tend to say or do things that we would see as like, yeah, that's just not, that's not good that you're doing that. But that doesn't discredit them as being a person who is feeling these feelings. So when we're dealing with somebody with a psychosis, you look at it as they're experiencing this for real. Just like when we have somebody who is, experiencing something of the supernatural realm, this is for real. But there's just so much information out there that either which way it is, there's always something that somebody says with a negative connotation that really causes an issue for people to connect. So when you make things to the point where you can show the relatable context between it all, people really embrace their experiences, who they are. They're able to move past it, because these experiences are very traumatic for a lot of people.
Yeah, they can be. For sure, and you're right. You do get a lot of those negative remarks and connotations and things like that from the skeptics or people that just want absolutely nothing to do with it. We've had that for a long time now. Now it's been improving here over the last couple of decades. I think the information that's available, really ever since the internet took hold. People have had access to more information. Those that were in small towns that had access to almost no information and would be ostracized from the community if they said anything, were able to get their hands on that, network and communicate, with a pretty healthy community. And so I think that's really helped over the past couple of decades for people to get a hold of that information, realize they're not alone. We're always going to have people that that don't believe and will put you down and what have you for having those beliefs, or talking about an experience that you've had. But hopefully those will become the minority in the long run.
Right, exactly, because you can't choose what a person says or feel about you in any way. But what you can do is say, you know what, I understand this is your opinion, this is the way you feel. We can move past this situation, but we can still be civil, and we can still be people, and we can openly speak about these things if you want. And when you address it in that manner, people will tend to be a little bit more respectful of your personal opinions, feelings, and so forth. So with your work, I know in your line of work, you have to do a lot of history research, right? You research different aspects of the history, culturally, the actual events, prior to the events, after the events. So you consider yourself a ghostorian, correct? Where you study Yeah, I know I said that all messed up, but I made sure to like spell it out on my computer, and like I literally, it's the funniest thing how I spelled it. I spelled it Ghoststorin, and I kind of like so I could say it
That's
right
right.
because I didn't want to mess it up because I'm already tongue tied today because like I said, I'm broadcasting from a whole different house. It's not even my house because of the situation with the hurricane, so I'm kind of a little
Mhm.
thrown off. But so as a ghostorian, you actually look at it from different aspects. You don't look at it as we see on TV where they play it out to be, just paranormal investigators. You actually look at it and find the history behind these things. And from one of the books I was reading, and we're going back to the book A Walk in the Shadows, where, and also I know you were doing a podcast about it, and I actually happened to listen in on that one where
Oh,
you were
thanks.
explaining that thank you where you were explaining, we're talking about in 1900s 1800s where people were having these events and they had no way of communicating, but the events were in the same exact order. They felt the pressure, they felt the person, they saw the shadow figure, but the only thing is that they had a different name for it. And I don't remember what the person's name was. I believe it was a lady who was afraid to actually speak about her experience because of being ostracized by her community at the time.
Yeah, and that's happened a lot where people become fearful of being ostracized from their community. I think the one that you're talking about, Lady D'Esperance, who became a very well-known psychic medium during the spiritualism movement, but she had an interesting take where when she was a child, she was afraid of ghosts and she was living in a haunted house. And the shadow people that she saw then as a child were actually very helpful in protecting her from the ghosts. But then as she got older and moved out and had a family and all that, she was seeing other shadow people that weren't as friendly. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, the shadow phenomenon goes back all the way to the big beginning of time. You see it in the ancient Sumerian culture. The ancient Egyptians talked about it. The Greek shades. A lot of different cultures had talked about this phenomenon. When you get to like the specific old hag syndrome, the sleep paralysis, and all of that, all of these cultures, and there's like a whole laundry list of them in my podcast and the video that I did on the Hunter Road Media YouTube channel. I just selected a few to give some examples, but you're talking like dozens and dozens of cultures from all across the world for all time talking about this same phenomena with seeing the shadow or seeing the old hag sitting on their chest or some sort of ghoul, and it's all the same sensations. The description's the same. They called it something else. They may have included a little bit of folklore or had some different excuse as to why it was happening, but it was all the same phenomena for thousands of years all across the world with cultures that didn't have any connection to each other, and I found that absolutely fascinating.
Right, and that's the thing. Without your work and without the investment of your work where you actually took the time to understand this, I wouldn't have realized the ties until I read your work and I listened to your podcast. And that's the thing. When we take the opportunity to listen and to learn and to explore things like this, we actually learn new interesting facts. They had different phenomenons in Native American cultures. There was cave drawings, back when they actually depict these shadow figures on them, as well as UFOs. They would actually draw them in the shadow. I mean, in their cave paintings and their cave art. And these are the things that were left there a long time ago, and this is going back, like you said, thousands of years, where it depict things like this. But what happens is, because of labeling, because of the way people feel they have to be in a society, they tend to ignore this as being part of our history. So it's really amazing that you take this information and this historical information and you present it in a way where it's relatable, where people can understand that this has been a phenomenon for decades. And that's what makes your work so important and such a contribution to the whole the whole situation of the metaphysics, the whole situation of paranormal activity, because you do it from an aspect where not only are you investigating it, but you're giving the information to understand what transpired, what went on, what happened. And a lot of investigations, they'll do ghost box, or they'll have their own types of way of, uh, bringing this to light. And we hear it on the ghost box. People discredited as just being radio wave signals or whatever. We have photographs of orbs and things like that. People discredit it for being dust. But irregardless, there is photographic evidence of shadow figures as well that people for many years can't discredit. It's just the mindset. So with your work, you allow a more open mind to this whole thing. It's not that you're saying, okay, people who don't believe and skeptics, they're just dumb and they don't know what they're talking about. No, you're saying, well, hey, listen, this is your opinion, but these are my findings. Here's my history. Here's the facts. Here's what I can show you to make you understand that this is a phenomenon that has been occurring. So you show a pattern of these occurrences. So when you do that, you're actually creating an educational environment where people are actually learning from this, and they're able to process these things a lot better. So I mean I've never heard of the word ghostorian until I read it on, and I was like, wow, that really is like, that really is awesome. I was like, because that's exactly what he's doing, and that's amazing because he's tying in history. I was like, I love that concept, and I think that concept is amazing because it's an educational thing. It becomes fundamental. It doesn't become a thing of just opinions anymore. It becomes where you have primary sources, you have secondary sources, and then you have the folklores, and you have all that to explain what's going on, so people actually get that full curriculum of things that are happening. So with that being said, we're going to take our first break, and then when we come back, we'll finish talking with Mike, because I know he's got to go soon. So I definitely want him to be able to explain where we can follow him. I know he does podcasts, he does YouTube things, he does Facebook things, which is amazing. So when we come back from break.
do we go now? Where do we go? Where do we go now? Where do we go now?
And we are back. So, in case you guys missed it, we were actually talking with Mike Rickersecker, who is a famous author, and he also has appeared and was featured on Travel Channel. And that show that he was has appeared on is called sorry, my computer just did a funny thing. Sorry. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm broadcasting from a whole different place. But the Travel Channel's show is called Alaska's Triangle, and he also was featured on Animal Planet's The Haunted. So we're back with Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Amanda.
Hey, Mike, I was just going to ask you regarding the circumstances around looking and investigating into the paranormal. Do you find that belief circles, i.e., named in religion, tend to be on the opposing force of what you do?
Is religion on the opposing force? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's a hard question to answer because so much of what we do, spirituality is ingrained into it. So anything to do with the afterlife, the creator of the universe. I talk about the connected universe, all the spiritual energy. All of that is all connected, regardless of a specific religion. I think what happens is you have kind of quote unquote religious people, those religious self-righteous people that want to beat you over the head with their book, and it's whatever book it is. I think those people that are very closed-minded and say it can only the knowledge can only be within these pages, those are the people that I have a hard time with. But I think the more open-minded people, even if they follow a specific religion, there are open-minded people out there that they're willing to listen to other aspects of spirituality. Those people I have fantastic conversations with.
And in your experience, for those that you have investigated, I know that when you were talking about your experience and having your arms being crossed over you, did it leave? How am I going to say this? Did it leave any markings of any sort, or have there been other cases where you've seen or even heard about markings?
Yeah, I've been on cases in which people have been scratched or marked, or had welts, or seemed like they got slapped in the face or something like that. I've been on those cases. With that specific shadow person, I've been asked many times, what that felt like, or if it left marks. It did not leave any marks, none that I can remember. Remember, I was very young, and it felt just like any regular person, really, that took me by the wrists and crossed my arms like that. So people ask, was there like an electrical feeling or anything like that? No, it just felt like a regular person. But yeah, I don't recall any marks from that. But yeah, I have been on cases in which people did get marked or scratched or what have you.
Because I know from my experiences in dealing with entities, the first ever experience that I had was back when I was in high school. We were told to go. I don't know if you know much about the Australian haunted places. Some of
A
the
little
most
bit.
famous. The one that I went to, we were doing a school excursion, and we went to the old Adelaide jail to sleep
Oh,
in the jail cells overnight.
okay.
And that was a scary. Now, I mean, there's been situations where they've had things that have been placed in the old jail, which happens to be completely removed by nobody, and they've caught this all on camera. But the night that I was in there, we had basically was staying in the jail cells on the floor with sleeping bags, with the door shut. And the night that I was in there, I had an entity crawl into my sleeping bag.
Oh, okay.
That was weird.
Yeah, I know. I've heard of stories like that where people will, and I haven't had that one happen to me, but where people will crawl into bed with you. Um, with that, jail cell, I'm guessing it would have been an inmate, but I've also heard of like children climbing into bed with people, the child spirits.
Hmm.
So that it's an interesting phenomenon. I've never had it happen to me, but
Well,
must be very
honestly, I wouldn't.
disconcerting to have something invisible climb into bed with you. Yeah.
Obviously, no. Well, honestly, I wouldn't have one done in a jail cell. You don't know what entities are running and spirits are running around in jail cells,
Hmm.
especially with ones that are well over 100 years old.
Right.
But the other occasion that I wanted to tell you about, it was one night I actually saw a demonic presence, and actually, do you know what's that? That movie with Adam Sandler, and he's doing the whole I can rotate my head kind of thing. I have
Little
seen
Nicky.
That's the one.
Oh, okay.
I have seen that personally. It scared the absolute bejesus out of me, but I ended up grabbing my Bible for some ungodly reason and started praying. And I'm like, damn. But no, I saw the face and everything. And the entity itself was on projected onto another person. So the person that was projected to was my ex-husband.
Oh, wow.
And so it was almost as if the body of my ex-husband was overtaken by almost like a possession, and to scare the crap out of me, all I could see was an entity's head rotating, but it wasn't my husband's.
Oh, really interesting. Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of any of those stories, but I mean, for me,
I've heard stories of like when an entity actually possesses somebody or gets inside their body, of the person's face actually becoming so contorted it no longer looks like them. Maybe that it's been shaped into the face of whatever this entity is, but I've heard stories like that.
it probably was maybe the same, but
Hmm.
who knows? I mean, it was dark room, so who knows what could have really seen. All I can tell you is what I saw at that particular time, what I could describe.
Right.
But I mean, for me, I see entities, spirits all the time. I mean, I used to see. I had validation. I think well over 7 validations of a little girl that used to live in my old house where I used to live,
Okay.
and right down to the color hair that it was human form, in color,
Hmm.
nothing, no apparition, no nothing. Right down to what she was wearing, the color of her skin, the color of her hair, her face, how old she was looking,
Oh, wow.
everything. And she used to hang around with me, and we did look into the history around that area. I've had a few people, of course, they weren't paranormal investigators, but there were psychics who tapped into my house at that time, and they said that she was just a lonely soul looking for her mother. Her mother
Oh,
could possibly have died of consumption. I mean, this is the lands of DC. I mean, the house that I was living in was built in the 1930s. That's war era. So
yeah.
who knows what the lands of DC were looking like back then? I'm guessing fields, pastoral fields with not as many houses as what it is today. And
Okay.
your guess is as good as mine. That's war era. That could mean anything.
Yeah, it really could be, but that's sad to think that, a little girl, and perhaps after her mother died, so did she, and that's just really sad.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, she was just looking for someone to not be her mother. She was looking for a mother. She had not crossed over,
Hmm.
but she just wanted a mother figure in her
Yeah.
in her world, and she used to play all the time. I'd see toys
Okay.
around the house, be in odd places, cupboard doors that were not open by the time I got up in the morning. Things were moving around, but I mean, I really didn't take any notice because it was benevolent. So I mean, it's not going to sit
Sure.
there. It's not scaring me at all. None of
Yeah,
the
I mean, and I've
apparitions.
in my research, I've heard stories of where there's a haunting of a little girl, but in one particular case, there was also a woman there, spirit of a woman, and even though she wasn't the girl's mother, and apparently they lived at two different times, she was actually in spirit acting as the girl's mother.
Hmm.
So, yeah, and it's really interesting how spirits in a location like that can actually form their own bonds.
Yeah, I mean, and it's probably the similar circumstance where a little child, probably around the age of 7 or 8,
Mhm.
was looking for a mother, couldn't cross over, didn't know how to, and needed someone to attach to as a motherly figure, and figured,
Sure.
I'm a mother. I show the qualities that possibly her mother showed to her, and just needed someone to talk to or someone to play with, and made it known when she was playing around the house by moving objects.
Yeah, it's just being playful makes complete sense. I think we tend to forget that these spirits that we're talking to were once human, and I try to, in my investigations, take that approach of just remembering, these are human beings that I'm talking to, that they no longer have a physical body, but they're still, they still have their human personalities. So yeah, she's just a little girl. I think you took a fantastic approach on that of, hey, she's looking to you as a mother type figure, and yeah, there's nothing malicious there. She's just a little girl.
But I
That's it.
mean, at the end of the day, I mean, she was more scared of me than I was of her.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
I
I
mean, there's
completely believe that.
but I mean, the way that a lot of people depict their stories, though, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're scared of them more than they are of us.
Well,
It's the opposite way
I think
around.
a lot of times, you know, people tend to fear what they don't understand. So when there are things moving about the house, or maybe they catch a glimpse of an apparition or a shadow darting across the room, they instantly become scared because they don't understand what it is they just saw. So then automatically, because they saw a ghost or they saw a shadow or whatever, they immediately deduce it must be bad, it must be negative, and and many times that's not the case. It's just, it's spirit activity. It's still a human, and we just don't understand it. So a lot of people just fear that because they don't understand it.
Exactly.
Right. And a lot of times they want our attention, and that's why they do some of these things. It's not to be
Yeah.
malicious. And that's why with the shadow figure that I was dealing with, I don't think it was trying to harm me, but I was feeling like it was being dominant. But once I
Right.
literally took my power, like, hey, look, I don't like this. Don't do this. Like, you need to, like, that's it. Like, I realize you're here. I recognize, but you really need to stop. And once I did that, it literally just stopped. And then, like I said, my kids would see it from time to time, peeking around the bathroom door or a corner or the hallway door. And they'll just kind of, it says it's like, my son says it all the time. It's like, it's really quick. It just peeks in and then it just pops
Yeah.
back out. And
It's just
it's,
being curious. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just being curious. So maybe the whole time it was doing it for attention, and that's what I figured. I didn't think maybe it was, at first I thought it was like, wow, this is something probably bad, but like I said, a lot of times see, this is the misconception. They want help a lot of the times. They
Right.
want to find someone or cross over, and they just can't. They're lost.
Yeah,
And
I would even contend that sometimes people that get scratched or marked or what have you, like Katie was asking me earlier. I think sometimes, it's not malicious. I mean, maybe there are times that it is, but I think sometimes, at least, that the spirit, the entity, doesn't realize its own power, and maybe it's just trying to tap you on the shoulder, and doesn't realize its power or how it's able to interact on the physical level, and you end up with that scratch or mark.
Right, and that's the thing. Like we feel our shirts being tugged, or like we'll feel like
Yeah.
something similar, like the spider web effect, or things like that. So it's like it really is important um, in any situation to try to remain calm and try to assess the situation versus cause the situation to be more chaotic by your response. Now, obviously, if there's things flying at you, okay, yeah, I understand you're going to get the hell out of there. You're going to duck and run, but
Right.
I get that. But when you start seeing little odds and end things, there's people that work in the field that will come out and help you. And I'm not talking about the investigators we see on the TV that are always getting beat up or whatever, but investigators that are really dedicated to this work and trying to better understand it and help those in their community. So there's always some information, some person, some agency, something out there for you. But the best bet is to stay calm and really assess the situation and not over judge the situation, which a lot of us do because we're fearful, which is our fight or fight. And we all have that. We all have that fight or flight where we see something, we're either going to run or we're going to fight, or we feel we're in danger, and this is our parasympathetic system kicking in and helping us to survive. It's survival. So I think if people understand their bodies, what's going on, the situation, a lot of it would be understood that it's not always malicious.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's exactly what you said. Just take a moment to step back, assess the situation, and realize that in many of these cases, it's not malicious at all. That it's just it we call it paranormal for a reason.
Right.
It's not something that's in our normal everyday life. It's something a little bit different. And yeah, we need to take a step back and just kind of think through, okay, what exactly did I just see or hear or witness?
Right, exactly. And that's the most important thing, and that's in every situation. It's in every situation. um, we have to learn to stop being so confrontational a lot of the times and just be a little bit more open-minded. And unfortunately, it's not really promoted as much as it should be, where kindness is not a weakness and love is not like a poison. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think it's all, and I think you're right. I think we're starting to see a big switch in that. We're seeing more light workers come out. We're seeing
Yeah.
more people focusing on the spiritual aspect of life, whether it's meditation, whether it's their religion, whatever it is. They started to that switch. A lot of the fear, we can contribute to the things like the witch trials and things like that, where people unfortunately lost their lives to it. So it is very understandable where all this fear and anxiety and stress came from. But I mean, we're not back then anymore. We're moving forward, and the only way to move forward is to do it in a positive way, not a negative way. And speaking of negative, I know unfortunately a lot of people have been impacted by the current pandemic, and I know, Mike, it probably impacted a lot of the work you're doing. Has it caused you to, experiencing delays? Like, did you have any plans of like attending Paracon or?
Well, yeah. Usually my schedule from March through November is usually jam packed with Paracons and conventions. There's my own that I put on, Haunted Road Media Paracon. I just released The Walk in the Shadows back in January, so I was supposed to be touring that book this year. That's pretty much been canceled. So there's a couple here, like in Iowa, that are supposed to be October, November, that may still happen. The Paranormal and Psychic Expo that Kevin McCarbo puts on, those are tentative right now. So if they're a go, I'll be out at those later this year. But most everything else has been postponed till next year. The one thing that I do have in stone right now, that as long as everything's going well next year, it's a whole year from now, next July, I'm hosting a Ancient Mysteries tour of Ireland. So I really do hope people will come out to that. It's going to be a fantastic time. It's, we're in 9 days, or what is it? 9 days, 8 nights. We're going to be visiting like 8 different castles. There's a haunted prison in there, which is basically like the Alcatraz of Ireland, stone circles and things like that we'll be visiting. So it's going to be a fantastic time. So I hope people will come on out and join us.
Right. And the thing about that too is Ireland is very rich with their lores and their beliefs. Like they believe in the little people, or what we call leprechauns. They believe in fairies. They believe in different things than what we particularly believe in on this side of the world.
I totally believe in fairies. I've seen them.
Yeah, but and the thing is that what I tell everybody is, if we're here, why can't something else be here? Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's always a grain of truth within those legends anyways. I mean, it's like when it comes to the fairy lore, because I had seen some different things. I was like, that it's happened a few different times. Like that, if there are fairies, that would be it. And so I start doing my due diligence, start doing the research. It's actually very difficult because you pick up most books on fairies and you're dealing with a volume this thick of all kinds of like folklore and legends, and it's like, okay, where's the original truth in here? I want to hear about actual experiences. So it makes it challenging because of all the little stories that have been compounded over the year, but there is an element of truth in there that these entities do actually exist, just not necessarily the way that we've become accustomed to thinking over all these years.
Right, because there's different forms of them. You have woodland fairies, you have sprites, you have water fairies, you have different types of fairy people in a sense. But like you said, and I totally agree with, is that there has to be some kind of truth behind any of these lures. There has to be something that caused it, started it, or something that was visible to somebody for them to believe in this, for it to travel on. And these lures have been around for decades, beyond decades, thousands of years. The Celtic belief is very much ingrained with different forms of these woodland creatures, and the leprechauns. They have a saying, watch where you throw your wash water, because you might throw it at a leprechaun because they go invisible. So they really hold true to it. Same thing with witches and things like that, where witches don't fly on broomsticks, but but there are people who actually practice the craft, and you have different forms of the craft. So yeah, there's always something out there that actually has the history. But I think with the whole fairy situation, and I don't remember the actual place, I don't remember where it took place, but I know there was a little girl who actually supposedly saw fairies, and had a lot of people believe in it, going to see the fairies. They were seeing these phenomenons, and then she cut out a bunch of fairy figures and then would hang them on trees and take pictures of them. And then her story got
fairies,
right. Her stories got discredited as being a girl's imagination and a lie, which there was phenomenons that people couldn't explain happening there, but yet this is what it. And she said later that she did it to protect them. Maybe she really did, because we do have a lot of people that when these things are mentioned or actually sought out or found, people unfortunately do their very best to make things go extinct, like the dire wolf. You know what I mean? Right. Things like that. So I could get where that can have a lot of truth to it. But I know you're getting ready to head out, so for our viewers and listeners out there, who would like to follow your work and follow you, where would be the best platform to do that on?
Yeah, well, a couple different places. Of course, you can go to MikeRicksecker.com or HauntedRoadMedia.com. Every week I upload videos to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/HauntedRoadMedia. You can also find me Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I guess, for the next 40 days. And where else? Of course, there's the podcast, Edge of the Rabbit Hole and Beyond the Shadows. So we do a kind of like this, a live broadcast on Tuesday nights on the Edge of the Rabbit Hole channel, and then those get uploaded as podcasts later, like Spotify, iHeartRadio, and all of that. So a lot of different places you can find me.
Right, and we're actually we brought in our our platforms too. So we're going to make sure that we upload this to all those platforms too. So if you guys by any chance miss the live, you guys can always find our archives. But thank you, Mike, for taking the time. I know but your schedule, my hurricane situation, but we made it
It's all
work.
good. We'll set up another time and do another hour or two. So,
No, definitely. I would really, really enjoy that. So thank
all right.
you. I do appreciate you being on Goddesses and Devils, and I look forward to coming on again. And guys, make sure you follow Mike. Like I said, he is a great author. He provides information in a way that it is non-biased, non-judgmental, but from an educational standpoint, as well as first-person accounts, as well as secondary sources accounts of these events, which makes it even more fascinating. So please make sure you guys follow Mike. But thank you again, Mike.
Thank you, Amanda and Katie. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
You're
You have
welcome.
a great
Have a
night.
great evening.
Stay safe.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Wow, Katie, he is so inspirational. I know I said that a lot about our guests that they're very inspirational, but see, that's the key. You can find inspiration in work that you may not have felt would have inspired you before. And with Mike's work, it really inspired me because it gives a different perspective on the events and these phenomenons that we choose to either ignore or put a label on or are afraid to say, you know what, that happened to me too. I seen that because of
You know what?
societal
You know what?
issues.
There's a lot of people out there that don't ask that big question, discern that big W question, and what's that? Is why? Why are these occurrences happening? Why? And there are a lot of people out there rather than actually investigate occurrences, they would rather just you know point their finger and say you're this, you're that, and put you down for having any such idea that that these occurrences could even happen.
Right. And that's something that like we've said every show and we'll say it again that we do not stand by. We are non-judgmental, we are open-minded, we are accepting of everything. And we choose to live our life with unconditional love and positivity. And when you do that, you start to learn something. That's the key. When you open your mind and you understand that there's a whole big world of things that you should be asking the question why instead of calling people names and labeling their experiences, you then become educated, you then become understanding, you then become positive, you then switch that negative vibration that sweeps across everybody, and you start to become a better you, right? And like I said, I've had my own experiences. I'm sure Katie had her own experiences. You heard about some of them on tonight's show. But the key of it is that when you share your experiences like that, there are people out there that are not going to call you crazy or are not going to judge you and are not going to label you for being whatever. There's a lot of people out here like Mike who actually make it a point to share the history and the lures and the first-hand experiences and the personal accounts of these events. And so if it can happen to me, Katie, and Mike, and thousands of people out there, then there has to be truth behind these phenomenons and these occurrences, right? So instead of calling each other names and bashing each other for our own experiences, why can't we, like I said, just be a little bit more open minded and loving towards one another? So, with that being said, if Katie doesn't have anything to add, I think we can wrap it up for tonight.
Yes, we can. And like I said, with regards to what you just said, the word is labels. We're so inherently able to just judge and label somebody just because of the way they are, who they are, and anything that has come from their past, their upbringing, their whatever you want to call a person that comes from them. And that's the problem is that I have with a lot of people is that we're so conformative to believing that labels actually truly exist that we go on to assuming that occurrences don't actually happen. So, with that said, you are listening to Goddesses and Devils with your host Katie Kamara, and of course Amanda.
Yes, and
That woman over
one
there.
last thing. I love you guys. I love Katie. I love everybody. But one last thing. I know sometimes we run into issues when we're on live Facebook. But if you encounter that, we do have different platforms that we are running the show on. And Katie, can you go ahead and tell them where I did my best to reshare out the YouTube link so you guys can
That's
find us on
fine.
YouTube? But
If
if you
anything
can,
does,
Katie, just give them a quick.
yeah, if anything does ever happen, there's always YouTube. YouTube is always live. It would never be blocked unless there was an absolute real reason for it. It may get blocked after the show, but I go and fix it anyway. So that is what I do. But no, we stream on multiple platforms like D Live. We're on VK. They're all video streaming platforms, and they do broadcast. They do not cut it off. Now Facebook is very very stringent. They will cut it off if and block you, block the not block you, but block the video. So if it ever does disappear, jump straight over to YouTube. You can continue on with that. YouTube will not block it. They will only block it after the show. So and usually within about 20 minutes. But you can go to all of those other platforms. Like I said, D Live, DK. There's also off the top of my head, I'd have to look it back up again. But yeah, there are a lot. YouTube, namely, be the first one that you would go to. It takes it. You have to really notice what we put out with the posts because the YouTube link is always going to be there. So if anything does happen, you're going to see the link. If you haven't taken notice of what the link is, then I can't really say too much more. But what I will say is that if you don't notice that there's YouTube on there, you haven't subscribed to the channel. Because if you subscribe to the channel and you're watching on your cell phone in particular, you would have received a notification on your cell phone saying that we are actually live. So little tip, go over to the YouTube channel, Somafusion, Mind, Body and Soul. Click the subscribe button and the little bell there for notifications so that when we do go live, you are able to see us and you won't have to worry about a thing.
Right, and if for reasons, because I was told that Facebook did boot us off for the song,
Yeah,
which is okay because
I
we
did look it
will
up.
send out an archive afterwards.
Yes, and it will be put up to SoundCloud, and then you can from SoundCloud. Then I put it up to all the other platforms as well. That'll be starting very very soon too. So please keep if you haven't gone and subscribed over to SoundCloud, you're not doing yourselves any justice as well because the audio files, not the video, the audio files is over there. So SoundCloud is a great platform for all of you guys to join up. You will be able to listen to all of our audio versions of the archives up on SoundCloud. You'll be able to follow us again by clicking on that subscribe and like and sharing. Skipping on that, especially the subscribing, you'll get that notification every time something is put up. So by all means, remember to go and subscribe. Don't just like and share. Subscribe. Subscribe.
All right, guys, we love you all. Thank you for listening to and viewing. If you are able to catch the live version of Goddesses and Devils, we will be putting up the archive again on Facebook for everybody to view it in case you missed it. If not, you can always go to YouTube. And like I said, for any reason, if it had stopped or blocked us, we will be back up on Facebook. We'll definitely send an archive.
We'll be back up in Facebook in soon.
So
Usually
don't worry,
that's
guys.
within 24 hours, put it that way.
Yeah, we'll be up there again. So please make sure you share, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like I said, we definitely have a lot of fun things in store, a lot of good topics. Right now, just to give you guys a quick heads up, we have another guest coming on this weekend, and I will be posting something up on our Facebook pages. Katie will post it up on our main Soma Fusion Facebook page for you guys to see. So I'm not going to spoil the guest right now, but she is a very, very inspirational woman. She is amazing. She is gifted. She is talented. And she is an entrepreneur in her own way as well. So we're going to be bringing you a very strong woman next weekend, and I can't wait for that because I love stuff like that. I love seeing us females rise up too. But anyway, no, thank you, and also don't forget to check out Mike, and his pages and his books are amazing. Thank you. We love you all. Like, share, and subscribe. Good night.
Good night.